Welcome, my channel members, to this behind the scenes, the first of 4 behind the scenes in this behind the scenes marathon. If you haven't seen the most recent community post I made, definitely check that out. It's got some updates for the channel memberships and things that's going to be happening over the next couple weeks or so. But with that said, let's get into the behind the scenes for what I think is probably what I see as the most important video I have ever made. This is the one that I just really cared about. Qibli is the best, or I think the YouTube title is Qibli is the best character in Wings of Fire. Here's why. If you've watched my videos, you know I love Qibli, and so I always knew I was going to put this video together at some point, and I waited until I was confident that I could do it justice to actually try. I think in total I spent 3 weeks on just this video, which was part of the reason I didn't release anything over Christmas, was because I was working on this video, also because I had finals, but yeah, it came together really nicely. So I'm excited to show you kind of what was going on behind the scenes and how it came together, how it was put together. In the behind the scenes videos, I usually like to focus on whatever the most important part of the video was. So in the musical behind the scenes, I focus on the making of music, and some of the more jump style funny videos, I'll focus on the editing and what was going on in that program. But in this one, I think the most important part is actually the script. What I was saying, how I formulated an argument for why Qibli is the best. So we're going to jump back and forth between the video and the script and talk about different things and why they were going on the way they were. So with that, let's do it. Happy 2023, everyone, or whenever you're watching this video. This year, I've decided to start things off right. So when I was confident I was ready to do this video, I knew, because this was in November or so, is when I was finally yeah, I'm ready to put this together. I decided that it was going to be my New Year's video, and my original plan was to release it at exactly New Year's, 2022 at 11:59 p.m. and then it turns to New Year's, release the video right there. And I decided not to do that because I figured probably not a whole lot of people would be on YouTube on New Year's. And then the video wouldn't do well, and that would make me sad because if I had to choose one video on the channel to get really popular, it would be this one. This one or the tragedy of Clear Sight. Either of those two I would really want to be popular. So I was like, okay, I'm going to release it on January 1st at a normal time to, like I said, start the year off right. So that's the first interesting part about this video. Without any further ado, here is why I think Qibli is the best character in Wings of Fire. Now, to get this whole thing started, I just wanted to say, if you don't already agree that Qibli is the best character, that's just fine. And this is another thing. Okay, so in psychology and yeah, just in psychology, if you want to convince somebody of something, starting from the position of they are wrong is an almost guaranteed way to make sure they don't come around to your point of view. If you want to convince somebody of something that you believe in, you have to establish common ground first. And then once you've established common ground, say, here are some reasons I think the way that I think, instead of here are the reasons you're wrong. Because if you tell somebody they're wrong, they're just going to be like, nah, I'm right, here's why. And then they're only going to be thinking about the reasons they're right and not other things that you want them to be thinking about. So when I started this, it was really important to me to start it off on the right foot. So I wanted to do that with these lines. If you don't already agree that Qibli is the best character, that's just fine. You don't have to. And if at the end of the video you don't agree with me, that's okay too. It's interesting because I'm saying you don't have to agree with me, but behind the scenes, what I'm really trying to do with these lines is get people to agree with me. Because I just want people to appreciate Qibli for all of his amazing features. Now, with that said, it is fine if it's not if Qibli isn't somebody's favorite character. There's a bunch of different reasons people might like different characters, and like again, it is a subjective belief. Everyone is going to have their own unique perspectives, and that's okay. Like that's part of what makes it fun to talk about the series. If everybody believed and thought the same exact things all the time, there'd be no point in talking to anybody about anything, because it would just be the things you already believed, and that's boring. So yeah, let's continue on. You don't have to, and if at the end of this video you don't agree with me, that's okay too. Ultimately, who you think is the best character is a subjective belief, and by the definition of subjectivity, everyone is going to have their own unique perspectives. Today, I'm going to try to show you my perspective, and hopefully help you see why I love Qibli so very much. Now, I could spend this time here talking about how he's really funny, or smart, or cheerful, or brave, or very loyal, but I'm not going. Originally in the script for this one, I had like 12 adjectives listed out, not 5. But then I was like, it just feels weird to keep talking this long, and then also it just looks odd in the video, so I had to narrow it down to like the main 5 that I thought to get this fun image too. Because at the end of the day, though I agree with those things, what makes Qibli such a great character is not them. Rather, it is that despite whatever excuses he may have not to, he consistently and actively endeavors to make the world for those around him a better place. That is the reason Qibli is. I love this image. This was submitted during the Jade character like fan art competition. Somebody sent this of Qibli with his sunglasses, and it's so good. Now, in order to understand Qibli's character, I think we need to begin with his beginning. He was born to So interesting thing about these lines, in the first, like, I had to re-record this section, which is why it's highlighted in red, a couple of times, because the video starts off like really upbeat and energetic and fun, and then we get into this section where it's really talking about Qibli's awful childhood, and the energy just goes from like 70 to 80 down to like 10 really fast. And so I had to re-record, especially the beginning here, to change the transition. So it's not just like, this is the reason Qibli is the best. Now we're going to talk about how sad his childhood was. Like, I wanted to be like, this is the reason Qibli's the best. Now, in order to understand his character, I think we need to begin with his beginning. He was born to Cobra at the order of his grandfather, and make it like a smoother transition and not like a hard, like, oh, it's sad time now, which is what it originally was. But I re-recorded and changed it up, and the transition felt smoother. Cobra at the order of his grandfather, who wanted a better heir for the crime syndicate. Cobra held no particular love for dragonettes, and Qibli was not an exception. She abused him, physically, verbally, and emotionally, constantly reminding him that he was a useless waste of scales. By and large, Qibli was left to fend for himself as a dragonette in a cutthroat den of... So, this is not an image of Qibli as a dragonette in the Den of Thieves, but this was the only image I could find anywhere of the Scorpion Den. So I was like, okay, good enough. We're going to put this here. He had to steal food to survive, and any food he did find, he had to hide from his older siblings, lest they take it from him by force. It was, for lack of a better phrase, devastating. To this day, the marks of his childhood still affect him, just as the scar running across his snout, given to him by his own mother, is now and will always be with him. The voices of his mother and siblings still echo in his head, serving as a constant reminder of how worthless a dragon he is. As a result, he craves power, or perhaps more accurately, he craves the ability to be useful so that he might be wanted. He is driven by a need for the approval of others. He needs them to like him, to see him as someone worth having around, or else what is he, except that useless waste of scales they all insisted he was? Oh, man, what an interesting line. He needs them to like him, to see him as someone worth having around, or else what is he, except that useless waste of scales they all insisted he was. This line was inspired by a like slam poetry video I saw in 8th grade. That was about like, it was like bullying or something, and our teacher made us watch it, and I was just like, wow, what a great video. And it was interesting because, like, the words that are said here, they don't make a coherent sentence. The transitions and the grammar is completely awful. This would not fly in an academic paper. But when you say it in like a way that flows, or like in a way like almost like it's poetry or something, it actually ends up sounding really good, and it communicates the idea well. And so I really liked that in the slam poetry video, and I wanted to try to emphasize that here because this is like a really emotional part of the script. So I wanted to bring that out, and this was my this was my attempt to do it. Yeah, just kind of fun. I think it came out all right.
Because of his upbringing, he is constantly on the watch for ways in which things might go wrong, and constantly thinking about how he would deal with them if they did. He is hyper-vigilant for and aware of the feelings, desires, and needs of others. This at his...
Just a little editing trick there. I like to always have something moving on screen a little bit, because if nothing's moving on screen, if it's just a static image, it's really boring to watch. So if you like pay attention to when this comes in, there's this like space of like 5 to 10 seconds where it's literally just text on screen. Like that's the only thing happening, and I have the background image blurred, but like that doesn't move or do anything. So what I do instead
he is hyper vigilant
is I have the text come in, and then instead of it being highlighted from the start, I add the highlight after it's been on for a couple seconds, and then it fades in, and then it's like, even though it's just this image on screen as I talk about it, we get a little bit of movement in the highlight that comes in. So that's just like, I don't know, if you ever notice it in one of my videos, that's me trying to make things visually engaging.
Feelings, desires, and needs of others. This, at his core, is how Qibli is shaped, but it is not who he is.
So with my video editing program, rendering text in the program takes forever. I don't know why, but it's just like, it's really not good at rendering text, and so it always slows down. So to get this timing right, to match up the appearance of the words like, but it is not who he is, to when I'm saying them in the script, what I had to do was align it to where I thought it would fit based on my best guess, and then render the whole video, and then watch the rendered video, so it wasn't the program loading it anymore, it was just like the video playing, to see how I needed to adjust things, and then make a small adjustment in each of like the words to make it line up better after I'd watched the video that had been rendered, and then render it again to see if I'd gotten it right, or if I needed to change things again. And I did this like 8 or 9 times to get it to line up. That took forever. That was like 3 hours to get it like this, but it is not who he is to line up correctly. It was so much time.
Who he is what he chooses to do with those qualities. Qibli always works to brighten the days of others, using his awareness of their feelings and his ability to analyze situations to uplift their spirits when they're down or cool their heads when they're upset. The scene that sealed it for me, that first convinced me Qibli was the kind of character worth having as a favorite, was in Book 7, when, as Winter's hope begins to fade in their search for Hailstorm, Qibli steps in. Here's the scene narrated from Winter's perspective.
I was so excited about it. So usually in my videos, I bring in voice actors to voice characters because I want the narration to be separate from the lines being read. But this video for me, and then especially the way in which these lines were read, the emotions that were present in these lines, was so just like important to get right exactly, that I was just like, I'm gonna do it myself, because if I bring on somebody to voice act for the lines, their voice is probably going to sound better than mine. Like, I don't have a whole lot of vocal variety between characters, so they're all going to sound the same. But I'm just, like, I don't want to tell a voice actor to redo a line 20 different times to get the exact right enunciation that I want. So I'm just gonna do it myself, and then I'll do it 20 times. And I think, yeah, in the original, like, recording of these lines, I probably went through each one 5 or 6 different times, even like knowing exactly what I wanted it to be, to like get it right. And then I mix and match the best takes of each of them to come out with how these lines came.
But there was no hope. Hailstorm was gone, as dead as all the other lost Icewings. And now Winter had the same crumbling feeling inside, except instead of a snowdrift caving in, this was a whole avalanche, cascading heavily down into his bones.
Getting
this
a
time...
phone call. 1 second. Hello? I am working on something currently. I'm gonna be another probably 15 minutes if that works. Okay, cool. I will see you then. Bye. That's one of my friends. They actually helped me on this video. I ran parts of the script and then also takes of this line by them to see, like, am I doing this well? Does this need to change? And they gave me feedback on it.
It was
Anyway,
even more his
just life happening behind the scenes. Continue on.
fault. He had failed his brother and then failed again and again and again. Stop.
That right there was what I really wanted to nail, where Winter is going down this spiral. And like, even though the line cuts off, you can like feel it continue on. Like he had failed his brother and then failed again and again and again, and it just like, you can tell there's more behind it. And then Qibli's voice like cuts in. It cuts off the line. It comes in on top of Winter's thoughts and just cuts them off. Stop.
He had failed his brother and then failed again and again and again. Stop.
Because that's what Qibli does in the book. Like, he sees Winter going down this like spiral of despair, and he's just like, nah, not today, not on my watch. I'm gonna pull you right out of it.
Stop it, Qibli said, suddenly in front of Winter, taking his shoulders and shaking him. I see you going to the giving up place in your head. Get yourself out of there right now.
And it's interesting that, like, Qibli is such a compassionate character usually, but in these lines, I felt he was really, like, assertive. Like, he was like, the time for being nice and happy and giggly is not right now. Right now, Winter is dealing with something really serious, and if I'm gonna help him out of that, I have to match that seriousness. And I thought he just did such a good job with it.
We do not know he's dead any more than we did an hour ago. What we have to do is keep searching, because he is only definitely dead if we give up and sit here like moping camels. You are not allowed to mourn until you see a dead body. Do you understand me?
He is at the same time altogether logical and then also really caring in this scene. It's just like, Qibli, you're so good.
Qibli continues on, outlining a plan for their search, and in doing so just so happens to send Winter and Moon searching together.
What a Chad.
Winter puts it better than I could. What kind of a moon's dazzled dragon would do all this for a stranger from a different tribe? Why hasn't he given up? Why isn't he letting me give up? And a couple lines later, he realizes he's letting me go with Moon on purpose. Even though he wants to be with her as badly as I do, but he knows, or he hopes, that searching with her will keep me going. Qibli are...
Now, if I have one complaint about that scene, that we just like watched the visualization of, it would be that I feel like I actually did Winter's lines better than I did Qibli's. And I'm always like, ooh, I feel like I really should have done Qibli's lines better. But I don't know how I could have. I don't know. I have no additional thoughts on that. I'm just going to put it out there.
Wonderful, wonderful Sandy boy recognizes the place Winter is going mentally, and he acts to stop it. He knows exactly what sending Moon with Winter is going to do to his own chances with her, but still, he chooses to try to save Winter from the pain he knows Winter would feel had he been allowed to go down that path. This isn't the first time Qibli does something like this, nor is it the last. In Book 6, he defends both Moon and Starflight much more.
Ooh, this is a fun edit. Okay, so there's the cover art for the books, but then there's also full art. Let me just pull one up really quick so you can see what I'm talking about. We'll pull up the one for Moon Rising, because that's what we have on the screen right now. So there's also full art for every book that isn't the cover edit, but is like the actual art that was turned into the cover. And so what you're seeing with this image here is actually the cover, and then behind the cover I lined up the full art so that it's not just like a black background, so that it kind of like merges together. And I don't get it perfect on every time. Like, you can kind of see, well, especially over here, like the wing doesn't perfectly line up with it, but like, it's good enough, it's close enough, so I didn't want to spend like too much time lining it up
personal risk,
perfectly.
but perhaps even more importantly, he helps Moon realize that
And it
her
also
powers are
leads
not
into
a
this
curse
like
or
cool
a tool to
transition
manipulate
between them.
others, but may instead be a force for good, changing her perspective both of her powers and of her place in the world. In Book 7, he volunteers to help Winter
I
with
just
the
think that
search for
looks cool.
Hailstorm, and, well, as we just saw, was an essential part of that success. In Book 8, when confronted with unlimited power, he immediately starts thinking of all the ways it could be used to improve the world, and it's not just big things like these, it's little ones too, moment-to-moment things that would be so easy to leave out or ignore. In Book 9, he makes Pearl's day better by mentioning that Clay likes her back, such a small phrase.
Okay, so in book 9, he tells Peril, Clay likes you back. He's just like figuring out how to say it, or something like that. Somebody in the comment section on this video had the audacity to tell me that Qibli was a bad character because he lied to Peril about that. I was like, what are you talking about? What? Are you really going to tell me that Clay does not like Peril back? Like, that's, there isn't any hard evidence of it. Like, I don't think it's ever explicitly said, but there's so many clues and hints along the way, especially after like the end of arc 1, that is just like, he definitely likes her back, and Qibli is just big brained enough to see that. Like, he's not, don't call him a bad character because you just couldn't see that Clay does like Peril back. Anyway, I'm getting off my soapbox now.
But perhaps the one thing in the world that would make Peril happiest, and Qibli finds it. In Book 10, well, in his book, he's just constantly doing this. He goes to what is quite possibly the last place in the world he wants in order to save Ostrich. He stops the attempted murder of his awful, awful older siblings, and during his arc's climax, he refuses the one thing he has always wanted, the ability to ensure he is loved, because he knows the world would be better off if he didn't. These are not passive acts of kindness or thoughtless compassion.
This is another editing trick. If I'm ever unsure of like what I should be putting on screen, I usually put text that's just repeating what I'm saying. So in this one, I was like, I have no idea what to put on screen for this. So I just like threw up a picture of Qibli that I liked, and then literally just made a list of the exact things I was saying.
Are deliberate,
and it kind of works, you know. It's like a thing to look at.
Improve the world for those around him, and this is what I see as the biggest distinction between Qibli and others. There are a lot of really, really kind, caring, and awesome dragons in the Wings of Fire series. He is not the only character who would go to hell and back for a friend. For these,
I don't know why. I just really like that line. It just like, it just speaks to me. Where is it? There it is. He is not the only character who would go to hell and back for a friend. Like, that's what true friendship is right there. Man, and Wings of Fire is just full of it. What a good book series. Okay, continue on.
Dragon's goodness, I'm going to call it, is simply a way of being. It is part of everything they do. It is how they interact with the world. Qibli takes that one step further. Instead of this goodness being just part of what he does, he is always on the lookout for ways in which it can be used. He pays attention for dragons who need him to be that good.
Just an interesting thought here, which is completely irrelevant to the video, but about the artwork. Since the shape of moons here and the shadow that is cast upon them is based on the earth, there's no possible way, unless there's another like earth-like planet out there somewhere, in which these moons have this pattern of shadows. Because like the way the sun would have to be over here casting a shadow, but if that was the case and these two were in shadow, the shadow would be on the right side, not the left. Or, sorry, on the other way around. It would be on the left side, not the right side. I don't know. It doesn't matter. It's just interesting to think about how the moons would actually look.
Be that good in their life. He's constantly trying to make things better. In doing so, he does not always succeed. Despite what many claim, he is not perfect.
This is a fun piece of art. I knew exactly what artwork I wanted to put on screen for this section. I wanted to put something with him misusing the bracelets, because, like, that's his biggest, I think, mess up in book 10, or just in arc 2, is when he's like, yeah, I can use magic responsibly, and then he uses the bracelets and ruins everything because he doesn't do it responsibly, and then he does it again later in the book. So I knew I wanted a picture of him using the bracelets poorly. So I went and I looked and I found there's only one person who has done a drawing of this that I could find anyway, and it was this one. And I reached out to them on DeviantArt to like, hey, can I use your artwork in a video? I'm blah, 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 blah. And I didn't hear back from them for like a week. And it was coming time where I needed to post the video because I was going to be leaving my computer for a while, so I couldn't post it when I was gone. And so I tracked them down on Twitter. I found out who it was and found them on Twitter, and then I reached out to them there and I was like, can I please use your artwork? It's perfect. I really need this. And then they were like, oh yeah, sure. Feel free to do that and send me a link when you're done. So they were super, super awesome, super nice. And just like, this artwork is amazing. It's so good. So I'm really glad I got to use it in the video.
He makes mistakes. He has flaws. His judgment is often clouded by his desire to be loved, by his dependence on Moon and Thorn, and by his confidence that he knows what it...
I love this image so much. I think it's by Keokalin. Keokalin? I don't know if I said that right. I'm going to double check that just to make sure. Yeah, it is. I just like the style of the artwork and then the use of blur in the background, like the mountain, but then also the foreground with Peril to focus the scene on Qibli and Winter yelling and Moon like being lost in her thoughts with Darkstalker. Like it's man, I love this style of artwork. It's so good.
Best. Because of his lived experiences, he is sometimes an insecure, power-hungry narcissist. And he has every reason to be. His upbringing was absolutely crushing. Anybody raised under those conditions would be expected to turn out like Sirocco and...
So the interesting thing about this section of the script, let's see, probably from about here on to here, is actually a... what do I say? It's like a paragraph that I wrote for a Dog Lover Likes Doge video. She made a video that was called The Dark Side of Qibli, and it was an exploration of all the ways in which Qibli is like Darkstalker, and all the ways in which like the future could have gone wrong if he'd made some different decisions. And this was like the comment that I made on that video, explaining my thoughts about like, yes, he is not perfect. He has this dark side to him. And it is because of that darkness that the light in him is able to shine so brightly. And so when I was like writing the script, I'd written that like a month before I started working on this script. And so when I was like putting this together, I started with this, with this, like these lines right here. And I was like, okay, now I'm building a video around this. And then I expanded the ideas and took them in different directions and stuff. But like this line is like kind of like the core of where the video started.
Rattlesnake, but Qibli doesn't allow that to define who he is. Yes, it leaves him with scars. Of course, it creates issues for him so deep-seated they may never fully heal. Despite that, though, he works to be one of, if not the most kind, positive, friendly, helpful, and noble dragons in Pyria. In a lot of ways, I think this is because he knows what it is like to not have that person, that shining beacon of happiness in one's life. He knows what it is like to live in darkness. And it is because of this that his light can shine so brightly.
It's so cheesy, but I just, it speaks to me on an emotional level. But the music that you're listening to in the background, I had this idea as I was putting the script together, where I was like, you know, it'd be really fun if I just made the last like minute or so as I'm just gushing about how Qibli's an inspiration for me and everything. What if I put like a really nice like montage track in the background and just had a Qibli montage to end it all? And I was like, wow, that's perfect. I'm gonna do that. So I searched for, I think, straight up like 2.5, 3 hours of just like going through song after song after song to just find the one that fit perfectly with the video. And there were two that I came across in that time of searching. There's this one, and then there was another one. It just turned out that this one was free to use, and that other one I had to pay $25 for. So I was like, okay, they're both perfect. I'm gonna go with the free one, and I love it. It works so well.
This, I think, He is an inspiration. He is an embodiment of the idea that no matter what your past is, no matter what your abilities are, no matter where you happen to be right now, you still get to choose what direction to head next. And that we make that choice with each and every decision we encounter day after day, hour after hour, second after second.
One interesting thing you'll note about these slow transitions, one is they're synced up to the music, and then two is that every shot is like zooming out a little bit. When I transition to a new one, it's like zoomed, it transitions to something close in that's zooming out. And that's so that we get this like constant sense of like movement, of like purpose, I guess, that we're capturing the whole image. Just an interesting thing to look at in the editing.
Second, that choice is part of everything we do, and Qibli chooses to try to make the world better. When I say I love Qibli,
I feel like I shouldn't point this out, because once I point it out, you're never gonna not notice it.
better.
This right here, this like, it's not quite black, it's just like an artifact of the rendering, and I tried so many different things to get rid of this. I tried rendering the video and then putting a black screen over this section of the clip so that when it rendered again, there would be only like a black background and not this like little spot of gray on it. I don't know what it was, but for some reason, like the way that this image is assembled leads when it fades out to that little like spot of gray for half a frame, and it's so annoying, and I just could not figure out how to get rid of it. Anyway.
Say I love Qibli. I think people often assume it's a romantic thing, that I'm
we got to talk about this part in the script, because I actually had more in it originally, and I had to take it out because it didn't fit the flow of the montage. But the original line was, when I say I love Qibli, I think people often assume it's a romantic thing, that I am attracted to Qibli. And that's what I say in the video. But in the script, I also have, and in all fairness, that's not an unreasonable assumption. I do play it up, mostly because I find it funny, and a little because it inspires some really quality fan art. And I really wanted to put that in there because it was like, yeah, I do. I overreact to everything that has Qibli in it because I think it's funny, and also because it makes great fan art, and it's just like good for building community with the channel. But it just wasn't flowing with the feel of the montage, so I took that line out, and just left it at this.
attracted to Qibli, but that isn't what I mean when I say.
And we get the montage.
To me, Qibli is.
So I think it starts off at like 50 frames, so 5/6 of a second per image, and then every new image takes off like 2 or 3 frames. So like the first one's 50, and then it's like 47, then it's like 45, then it's like 43, then it's like 40, and everyone just keeps getting faster and faster, which you'll see as it like transitions
An
more.
ideal to strive for, an inspiration to be more than we are, to develop the ability to understand how to make things better, and then to have the courage to actually do it.
Until it
That
fades
is what I
finally
mean when I say
into Qibli.
I love Qibli. And that is why I think Qibli is the best character in Wings of Fire. I hope you enjoyed
I'm cutting it
this
out with the
analysis
music.
as much as I enjoyed writing it.
I love it.
Thank you for watching.
Well, there it is. Oh, I guess we could. These were the patrons at the time. Since been joined by a few new members, which is awesome. I love to see it. But oh man, yeah. So that's the behind the scenes of. Oh wait, look back to this image. I love this image. Back to the behind the scenes of probably the video on the channel that I have like cared about doing well the most. So please do, if you have any questions about it or any questions about Qibli, I would be more than happy to answer them. But yeah, that's behind the scenes for this video. That's 1 down, 3 to go. And I will see you in the next behind the scenes of the marathon. All right, adios.